Hello, everybody. So this is video lecture number 4 on the first chapter of Child Growth and Development, and we are talking about theory of development or developmental theory. The last lecture slide ended with a discussion about the first behavioralist, that's Ivan Pavlov. So if you'll remember that behavioralism is a it's a psychological perspective of development, among other things, that is really only interested or concentrates on what can be observed. So prior to our conversation about behavioralism, we were talking about the Freudians, and the Freudians emphasize things below our conscious awareness. The behavioralists are really just about what we can see. There's no reference or regard for things that are below our awareness. We're just going to talk about what can be observed, behavior that can be observed. So Pavlov, he's the one who's famous for the dogs and the bells and the slobbering. And if you've ever heard a phrase, it's part of my vocabulary called the Pavlovian response. A Pavlovian response is simply a biological response to some environmental signal, maybe a bell, a cell phone ding, a doorbell, a whistle, maybe even a smell, right? So that causes this physical reaction because you have learned to associate, you have been conditioned to associate that environmental sound, smell, sight with an emotional response. Okay. I hope that makes some sense. So the next behavioralist I want to talk about is Watson. I should actually put some pictures up here from their actual research. But so Watson dies in the middle 1950s. His most famous research is about a little boy that is known historically as Little Albert. I don't believe that's actually his name, but sometimes you'll hear him just called Little Albert or Baby Albert. And the story goes is that this was one of his graduate students that he was experimenting with. Earlier in a previous lecture, I mentioned the role of ethics. So the story of Little Albert is actually quite an unethical story, and today this would not be permissible human research. This would be illegal and considered to be unethical, partly because Albert was a child. Albert did not consent to be a part of this experiment. Also, Albert was traumatized through this experiment and it was never undone. So both of those things, causing harm and being children, would make this research unethical. You can actually look at my little Google search on Albert I think he died in his 50s. Anyway, so the story goes is that one of the positions or the philosophies or the beliefs of Watson was that there are really very few things that we are innately, organically born with to fear, and one of those is loud noises. And this does kind of make sense if you've ever been around a baby, how they startle at loud noises. And Watson demonstrated that you could condition children to be afraid of things they were not born to be afraid of. And this is, again, what we would call classical conditioning. So in the story or in the research, history tells us that he introduced little baby Albert to a variety of potentially harmful things, like a rat. I think your textbook makes reference to a burning piece of paper. And because Albert was a child and he was curious, he kept trying to touch these things because he wasn't afraid. Albert, the baby, had learned no reason to be afraid of white fluffy things. Well, Watson, believing or understanding that children are innately afraid of loud noises, paired up these things that baby Albert was not afraid of, in this case a white fluffy rat, with a loud noise. So he would give him a rat and cling the bell. Give him a rat and cling the bell. The same way that Pavlov was giving the bone, or ringing the bell and giving the bone, and little Albert learned to be afraid of the white fluffy things because he had been conditioned. He had learned to associate the white fluffy thing with the loud noise. So he grew to be afraid, and the story goes was forever forever afraid of white fluffy things, including not only rats, white rats, but also men with beards. So in one account of the story is that Watson was forever afraid of men dressed as Santa Claus because he had learned to associate white fluffy things, hence white fluffy beards, with loud noises, and he had grown afraid of things he was not prior or afraid of prior to these experiences. So Watson demonstrated you could change children's behavior. And he went on to argue that he had the skills and the theory and the understanding of human behavior to create that if a parent followed his advice, that you could make your children do whatever, become and do whatever you wanted, that you could classically condition your children and mold them. I think the story goes as he said, give me a blank slate, tell me what you want, and I can make it happen. Anyway, so that's what Watson is famous for. You can decide how you feel about that. Another behaviorist, and I'm watching my time here, another behaviorist that I want to talk about is Skinner. And so Skinner is a little bit more contemporary. Skinner is the one, so Skinner's form of behaviorism, again, you change the environment, you're only looking at the things that you can measure, is what we would call operant conditioning. Now, I'm not going to quiz you on classical conditioning versus operant conditioning. That's for your psychology of learning class. But what that means is that people learn that they can operate on the environment. That's what operant conditioning is that you are conditioned to understand how you can make things happen in the environment based on your behavior, right? So Skinner's focus here is on this phenomena of reinforcements. That reinforcements, things in the environment, can make behaviors happen or make behaviors stop. And he argued that there are basically 5 different ways of thinking about reinforcements. You have a set of reinforcements that are called intrinsic, and these are the things that are naturally desirable. So a person or an animal will do something because they want that natural reward. So food, for instance, is a natural reward. Food for an animal. If you've ever tried to clicker train a dog, you know that dogs respond to food. That's just a natural thing. You didn't have to train them to want to eat. They just want to eat. Or some case, attention. Or food, water. For people, it's often this sense, this feeling, dopamine, right? This reward that we get. That's an intrinsic reward. It's not tradable. You just feel good, right? And everybody wants to feel good. Extrinsic, sometimes you can think of these two things. In my psychology class, I talk about the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic. Intrinsic is being internal. It's internal to you. And extrinsic being external, something that's given to you. And that's kind of how Skinner talks about it here, because you have extrinsic rewards are indirect rewards. They're things that are traded for something else. So an extrinsic reinforcer would be dollars or a grade or a trinket of some kind, that then the dollars or the grade gets traded for something else. You take your grades, you get $10, you go buy something, and that something gives you the internal reward. So these are external things that can be used to get internal rewards. Intrinsic rewards are always going to be more powerful and more salient. I'll talk more about that probably in another chapter. Then you have what we call positive reinforcers and negative reinforcers and punishment. This gets a little confusing because our culture, we use these concepts in pop culture, but we don't necessarily use them correctly. What a positive reinforcer is you get something added. You get something good added for doing something. So what was a note that I made here? Oh, bonus points, right? Or money, or I don't know, you get a little badge on your video games, right? So this is something that is meaningful to you that gets added. A negative reinforcer is something that gets taken away. So the best example, the one that pops right into my head, is the ding, ding, ding when you don't put on your seatbelt. Right? In my car, it'll go ding, 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 and then if it keeps going, it gets louder and longer and more rapid. Like, it is freaking annoying. It is a bad thing that if I don't do what it wants me to do, it keeps on going. The way I make it stop, the way I make this bad thing stop, is by doing what it wants. I put on my seatbelt. So a negative reinforcer is something that gets taken away. Another, and this is where it gets kind of confusing, say if you you have an A going into the final exam and you don't have to take the final exam. That is also a negative reinforcer because the final exam is something that gets taken away for doing the right thing. For getting good grades, something gets taken away. For paying your bills on time, now you don't have to make one payment a month. That's a negative reinforcer. Something gets taken away. If they put money in your bank account for paying your bills on time, that would be a positive reinforcer. But when it's removed, whatever it is, when something is removed, that's negative. When it is added, and when it's added and it's pleasurable, that's positive. Okay, I hope that makes a little bit of sense. A punishment, however, so a punishment is not something that gets taken away. That's a negative reinforcer. A punishment is when something bad has happened or something bad gets added. So a punishment is when you have a late fee. That's a punishment. I keep thinking of all these credit card examples. Or you now have an extra chore. That's a punishment. Or you have to write sentences. I don't think we do that anymore. That's a punishment when something bad is added. But when something bad is taken away, that's a negative reinforcement. I'm trying to think of another example. You get grounded. So I guess being grounded would also be, if something good gets taken away. So I think that would be one of an example that's not on the slide. Anyway, that'd be a punishment. Okay, I noted my time. I'm over 10 minutes. Behavioralism. Skinner is about how we can, Skinner talks about reinforcers. He's also got this thing called, what he called it, an air crib, and that you can control all aspects of your environment, but that's not discussed in this chapter. Okay, in the next slide, I want to talk about social learning theory and perhaps cognitive theory. Okay, thank you. Bye.